Hello and welcome to a special edition of Legal Talk Show. It's a show where we discuss various important issues that happen in our society from a legal lens. Today we're going to be discussing a very important issue on suicide. Just to note that the 10th of September every year is a year where we commemorate World Suicide Prevention Day. The reason is because when you look at what's happening in society, there are a surge of suicide cases, not only here in Zimbabwe but around the globe, with over 800,000 suicide cases being reported annually. This year's theme is creating hope through action, and it's a theme that recognizes that we need to act collectively as a global community, as well as individuals and youths in responding to the problem of suicide that exists in status quo. Currently from Say What, we have assisted over 200 young people dealing with psychological issues through our call number, which is 577. And today we are joined by a variety of panelists who are going to be discussing this problem in status quo so that we can unmap what is currently happening not only in Zimbabwe but around the globe, but so that we can also discuss solutions to solving this urgent problem. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, starting with the gentleman on my far right.
Thank you very much. My name is Moses Nkomo. I'm a legal practitioner. I practice in Harare, but I'm also a lecturer of law at the University of Zimbabwe for the past 15 years. I'm also a youth advisor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church for as far back as I can remember.
Well, thanks for coming to the show, Moses. It's really going to be good to have you. And the lady?
Hello, everyone. I'm Primrose Banda. I'm a social worker. I'm by Say What as the call center advisor at our call center that runs for 24/7.
Thanks as well. So in today's show, just to understand the reason why we're having this discussion, we understand that there are a lot of suicide cases that are spiraling out of control. I think really a week goes by where we don't hear a story about someone who killed themselves on the media. We hear stories about love and heartbreaks being some of the causes of suicide. So let me start with a question to you, Moses. What is suicide from your own perspective, and what are the main causes of people to commit suicide?
So I'd say, as far as I understand it, suicide is that taking of one's life, where somebody comes to that end and they just, by one means or the other, they decide to end their life. I wouldn't want to call it voluntary, because I believe suicide is never voluntary. Somebody is pushed to the cliff and they are left with no option rather than to plunge. So the causes are very varied.
Yeah.
Some of them are psychological, some of them are emotional, some of them, I would dare say, are spiritual. So the causes are quite diverse. But ultimately, what causes suicide to then materialize is where there is no other escape. The lack of an escape route from a situation will eventually push the affected person over the cliff.
Yeah, so what I like about what you just said, Moses, is people tend to look at individuals who have committed suicide in negative lenses, like why have they chosen to take this road, and there are a lot of negative talk about that harm the individual in question. But when we start to look at other social causes, like you talked about, there are other causes and factors that exist, then it probably means that we can have healthier discussions that allow us to question why people are doing this, right, and to come up with better reasons to help those individuals. So just looking at these issues of suicide, what do you think, especially for young people right now, maybe some of the reasons why they end up taking this dreadful action?
Looking currently at our generation of the youth that we have high rates of suicide being due to issues to do with relationships, depression, and mostly monetary issues. So we have, I wouldn't say it's moderate cases, but a lot of cases, especially with the call center that we run, have high cases of people calling, I'm suicidal, I'm suicidal. What's the issue? Oh, my girlfriend did this. My girlfriend slept with some man. I found my boyfriend or girlfriend or wife, husband in a very compromising situation with someone. And I think this is it for me. And then we have people that talk about issues to do with, I don't know what's going on. I'm just depressed. I feel like the end is it for me. There is no escape for them.
Okay, so a follow-up question as well is, I think when the media is reporting suicide cases, the numbers or most of the stories are mostly about men. I want to ask from your experience from the call center, is it something that I think women also report on? And why do you think men are more likely to do that, to commit suicide than women in status quo?
Yes, it is something that we get from our call center. However, you are right. It's mostly men that we see on social media. With women, I think it's because we have been raised in in surroundings where we have girl chats, we have people to talk to, we have small little groups to get advice on, we have anyone and everyone to ask. With men, it's like that society expectations that be strong, just man it up. People barely talk about it. Men barely want to be expressive of how they feel, what's going on, and they feel like this is so embarrassing, I can't tell anyone. Or they don't have those strong bonds with anyone to share their problems. And boys don't usually form those little cliques where you guys can talk about your problems or how my relationship is going. It's more like, let's drink, just swallow it up, it goes. And it never does, because this is suicide. Those thoughts, they actually, it's like cancer. They keep growing and growing and growing if not taken care of. So it's those little aspects that we have in society where we don't give room for men to talk, and we're not listening enough, and they're not opening enough. It's a 50-50 case.
And a question for you, Mr. Moses, is looking at suicide, I think we mostly examine it from a social lens in status quo. My question to you is, do you think suicide can also be a policy issue or a legislative issue? Do you think this is something that can also be responded to using policies or legally speaking? And are there any failures in status quo in Zimbabwe and probably any other country in the world in doing so?
Yes, I would say to a large extent, it would be a policy issue.
Okay.
Where we need to have a proactive policy framework that anticipates the problems that she highlighted. A policy framework that creates spaces for not only young people, for society, members of society, to come forward and really express how they're feeling. We need to destigmatize suicide. Because right now it's surrounded by so much stigma. I've heard people say suicide is the path of a loser and so forth and so on. Those stigmatizing statements. So we need to create a social space, and that can be done through policy. I think the Department of Social Welfare, it should be one of their mandates to create safety nets where they're not only responding to humanitarian needs, but they're also responding to psychosocial needs. It's the psychosocial aspect has not been taken care of in terms of our policy framework. So I think there's scope for looking into the psychosocial framework under the premise of the Department of Social Welfare or any other setups that government can come up with.
Okay, so an argument that people who sort of defend the stigmatization of suicide is that they probably look at it in the lens that at a point where we just talk about suicide openly, there could be a problem where you sort of encourage that behavior or you normalize that. Do you believe that that is not necessarily true? And in what ways do you think that this stigmatization is the best way to go?
Well, my thinking is this. The moment we hide things, we pretend that these things are not happening. When the statistics that you mentioned at the start of the show clearly show that this is a growing problem. So we need to come to terms with the reality and say, you know what, this is a problem. We need to confront it. We need to put in place mechanisms. I believe proper education will actually reduce suicide. Because, like I said earlier on, what causes people to commit suicide is there is no other channel other than to plunge to their death by whatever means. If we talk about it and say it's normal to have suicidal thoughts, I believe, I would say everybody at some point, they entertained that fleeting thought to say, life is meaningless. It's normal. But the moment we say it's not normal to think that life is not worth it, then we are pretending. So if we create then that platform to say it's perfectly in order to have thoughts about ending your life, but how do you deal with those thoughts when they happen? I think we'll then be moving in the right direction. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, those are very interesting and compelling thoughts. So we'll continue this discussion soon after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to today's episode of Legal Talks, where we are talking about suicide, a challenge that I think is so profound in today's society. Now we are joined by another special guest who is a young lady to my right that I'm also going to ask to introduce herself.
Hello viewers, my name is Panashi Chibachamoto. I'm a social work student as well as a sexual reproductive health rights defender.
All right, so jumping straight to the questions, before the break, we had a very interesting discussion about policy and about what is currently happening with regards to the ways in which society decides to pretend that suicide is not happening, and as a consequence, they create stigmas about suicide. So probably to start with a light conversation, Moses, what really is the biggest difference between right now and what used to happen, say, when you were still a young person in university? Because I think what's happening right now is we see more and more cases of suicide being reported on the media and just more cases being reported overall. So would you say there is a difference that exists and there are some challenges that needs to be addressed?
Yes, definitely there is a big change. I was last in university in the year 2002.
Okay.
That's when I graduated from the University of Zimbabwe. And back then, there was no abundant technology as we have now. What technology has done, it has destroyed the social networks, the socialization. We can be in the same room. Somebody is entertained by their gadget. If a cause of frustration comes on that gadget, because they have been cultured to exclusivity, they will not open up. Back in the day, we spent more time together. So we had opportunity to even see that it's not well with my friend here, it's not well with my brother there. Now, people are so engrossed with their gadgets. That has destroyed the social connections, which previously would give flex. If a person who was vocal, talkative, interactive, suddenly becomes withdrawn, you would easily notice because we had those spaces together. Now, everybody is on their gadget and you don't know whether they are happy, whether they are sad, whether they are depressed. So that's one of the biggest challenges. How can we deal with that? I think we need to reintroduce social platforms, interactions, especially for young people, because that gives them an opportunity to then open up. You don't open up the first time we meet. You open up as you grow confidence in me and as you begin to build trust in me. That time together is no longer there. So let's come up with mechanisms that bring people together, that build trust among people and create channels for observation, but also for communication.
Okay, so relating to that, I think, as you mentioned, young people have become engrossed in their gadgets. And probably this was something that was worsened during the COVID-19 pandemic, where we had to be exclusive. And right now, some jobs, some workspaces are still advocating to be remote. So this question now is for you, Pana. How do you relate with that as a young person? Would you say there is this culture of isolation and loneliness that is happening in status quo? And is that actually a problem for you and other young people?
All right. COVID-19 came with a lot of pros and a lot of cons to say. And one of the greatest risks that we had as young people is the issue that we were not mobile. Let's say, for instance, that you have a situation that you need to be attended on. Let's talk about, I'm a sexual reproductive health rights defender. Let's talk about having an STI and you need help. But at that time, you could not access it because we're told to stay at home. And right, because of that, someone can get depression. Someone can start thinking, what is going to happen? Because now I have an STI and I cannot get help. And then the issue that we didn't have other young people to actually talk with. So what happens with communication is when we are texting, people can interpret emotions in a different way. So if I say, hi, I'm fine, you can think that, okay, fine, she's okay. But when you talk to a person face to face, you can actually see that, no, this person is not really okay. So COVID-19 came with a lot of distractions in terms of mental health and in terms of knowing what someone else is feeling. You understand?
Yeah, but also just following back on that question, again, yeah, it's been said that as young people, you are more you are more intertwined with your tech gadgets. Do you think there's also a space for responding to mental health challenges using the media? Because obviously, say what you used 5777 to counsel individuals.
Yes, technology has not only done bad, but also there are some good things about technology. To start with, in terms of social media, it's very difficult for someone to come out and say their problem, especially in this day and age, because of the comment section.
Okay.
So you get a lot of things that demotivate you and make you feel like I shouldn't have said this at the first place. But yes, social media has been also a progressive tool in terms of addressing mental health. That is on platforms whereby we have positive affirmations that make you feel, okay, fine, I can keep moving and I can keep going.
All right, so now moving on to, I think, one of the most significant questions in today's discussion. What should be done? And I'm going to ask that question to you first, Moses. And I think in answering this question, I want you to put yourself in the lenses of different actors. Like firstly, civil society organizations that try to respond to issues of mental health, and other organizations as well. Or secondly, states, and like you talked about, the legal and judicial process and the legislative process in and of itself. So what needs to be done in status quo in order to deal with this challenge? Because I think it's really profound and it's happening in so many countries, especially ours.
Sure, thank you very much. So what I think needs to be done, first by the people who are at risk of entertaining suicidal thoughts.
Okay.
Don't brood over suicidal thoughts. You get a thought, delete it.
Okay.
How do you delete it? Switch on to something positive. Where you have 100 reasons to die, find that one reason to live.
Okay.
Switch your mentality. There's this philosophy that says it starts as a thought. If you brood on it enough, it hatches. It starts as a thought. If you brood on it enough, it becomes an idea.
Okay.
And an idea evolves into an action. And an action becomes a habit.
Okay.
And a habit defines character, and character defines destiny. So this fleeting thought happens. My life is meaningless. You entertain it, it metamorphoses into an idea. It gains strength. It gains strength. You entertain it further. You begin. That's why people say I am suicidal. That's a characterization. You become suicidal, and eventually it leads to consequences. So the other way to deal with that is to open up. If you're feeling overwhelmed, just speak to the next person. We'll maybe revert to this when we discuss what at policy level can be done.
Yeah.
The other thing that the next step for me is, let's look at what civil society can do.
Okay.
Congratulations to say what for this conversation. This is one of those things that are necessary. Let's speak about the problem. Let's break the silence. One of the biggest enemies that we have had to deal with is the mystification of suicide. Let's talk about it. It's a real problem. So thanks, congratulations, say what? Let's have more of these initiatives. Let it not be something that is done just in commemoration of the 10th of September.
Okay.
Because people don't die only on 10th September through suicide. Let us have regular conversations. So that's a suggestion. Regular conversations. If it means monthly or bi-monthly or twice a year, but let it not be done only in commemoration of World Suicide Day.
Okay.
The other thing, for policymakers, I think we need to have a multi-sector approach where we are saying suicide affects people in different spaces. There are people that are in primary school. We have had cases of primary school children committing suicide. What can be done at a policy level in the education space to address the issue of suicide? What can be done to tertiary institutions? What can be done in the workplace? Because some of these suicide cases among adults, they relate to things that happen at work. If a woman feels harassed by their boss at work and they have no one to speak to, they may end up entertaining those suicidal thoughts and eventually they may die. So we need a multi-sector approach. What I'm saying is education sector, we need a policy framework. The labor sector, we need a policy framework. The health sector, there are people that commit suicide because of health conditions. So we need a multi-sectoral but interconnected approach among the key stakeholders.
Yeah, so that also brings to mind the question of, I think, hustle culture and the fact that in status quo, the workplace is really a place that is so demanding for most individuals. Do you think there are at present enough legislations to ensure worker welfare, not just in terms of like your physical health, like you get harmed, you get treatment when you are harmed at work, but also in just relation to your mental health as an individual?
Mental health is stigmatized in this country and probably in many other countries. So there is no legal framework, there is no policy framework that creates an environment that confronts and deals with mental health issues. That's a policy gap. That's why I'm saying we then need a multi-sector approach. Probably we may need to do baseline surveys, a needs assessment. And that is something that civic society can also do. Program around needs assessments for mental health in these different sectors that I've mentioned: education, health, the workplace, and many other places. And I think that would go a long way in creating sustainable solutions to this monster of a problem.
Yeah, those are very interesting perspectives on how we can tackle. Pana, in your own point of view, as a social worker, as a student, as a young person, what do you also think needs to be done in response to suicide?
All right. I feel like here in Zimbabwe, we're very limited on options, especially on how to deal with suicide and other mental issues. To start with, one most common thing is kana munhu azviuraya mweya yetsvina. You understand? So in terms of policy level, how then can we best address it? Because people are saying that this is spiritual, and we can't be sitting down as people and discussing spiritual things on a policy level. So I feel like it is important to have engagement with different stakeholders and different policymakers on how best we can tackle this issue on mental health. And also my suggestion would be, I feel that as early as primary school, it's very important that we educate young people, because the moment that we want to talk about mental health at tertiary institutions, at maybe probably high school level, I feel like it's now a bit too late. It is important that as they grow up, young people, we actually teach them on mental health, the importance of mental health, and also how to guard their mental health.
All right. Thank you so much for your interesting insights and for being part of this episode. I think if there is one thing that today's episode is emphasized on, it's that suicide and mental health are not just issues for individuals, they're issues for everyone, civil society organizations, even governments in terms of their legislations and the policies that they implement. They need to be a holistic, like you say, it needs assessment, researches with regards to suicide, and there needs to be holistic policies that are also implemented that respond to this challenge. So thank you so much for your amazing ideas. We sincerely hope that these are ideas that will be of benefit to society, that will lead to discussions, healthy, positive discussions on suicide, as opposed to just random discussions that are not going to materialize into anything as a whole. I don't know, do you have any parting words to anyone who may be listening?
My parting words is, this is a real problem, but let us share the problem. A problem that is shared is a problem that is half solved, as they say. If you entertain the mere thought of suicide, share, you may get help, and it can make a huge difference.
Thank you so much. And any last words for you as well?
Oh, yes. And that is, suicide is never an escape plan. There is more to life, and you need to really talk to someone if you're feeling depressed.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Talk to someone. You can call, say what on what number?
577.
So once again, thank you very much for staying tuned into today's episode. Should you entertain any thoughts of suicide or mental health problems, do remember that Say What is a platform where you can talk to us, talk to young people as well who are guaranteed to keep your information confidential, and we are going to help you get the assistance you need. The number you need to dial is 577. It's a toll-free number, which means that you are able to call it anytime, anyway, without needing to have any airtime in your phone number. So should you need any help, please try to get assistance as soon as possible. We are here to help you on any issues, not just on mental health and suicide, but other issues as well that you may be facing as a young person. So thank you so much for staying tuned into today's episode, and we look forward to having you in the next one.